Want to go to little downtown Elizabeth?
Yeah.
It's so
All I saw for downtown Elizabeth was the McDonald's that has nothing on the inside. There's nothing in there. There's places to sit. There's no menu.
There's kiosks.
There's kiosks. There was barely a person. I went for an ice cream, by the way, just to cool off. Yeah.
So we go up to the kiosk, and my husband and I are both pretty technologically savvy. It's not like we're, ancient people. And this teenager who works there comes up, did you need some help with the kiosk?
Ugh.
Before we start today's show, please visit the sponsors, affiliates, and friends of the Stagecoach. The Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast, hosted by Rob Morse, brings you recent examples of armed civilians protecting themselves and who they love. The show helps you determine if people were lucky or trained, maybe both. Self-Defense Gun Stories is on all of your favorite podcast outlets. TheGunFood.com has an extensive network of partners to connect you with your guns, ammunition, and firearm training. The Gun Food only sells ammo that they trust. Use RSWC as a discount code and save 5.56% on your order at TheGunFood.com. PowerTac flashlights have combined premium craftsmanship, American ingenuity, and cutting-edge technology, creating a highly dependable tool that you can trust your life with. Go to PowerTac.com/RSWC and save 15% on your order. That's PowerTac.com/RSWC. Sabre Pepper Spray has been making grown men cry since 1975. Find the link in the show description and help get the Stagecoach across America with every Sabre Red purchase you make.
Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the Stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, if you are new to the channel and you have not subscribed to the channel, please do, because that is good for all things YouTube. I do see that more people watch the show than subscribe to the show. So please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are listening to the podcast, you can subscribe to the podcast as well. And I'm glad you guys are here, and I appreciate you being here. All right, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are in Elizabeth, Colorado, and we are with my sister from another mister.
Yes, sir.
Which is great. Laura Carno, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for being here.
This is really cool. This is really cool.
Yeah, I don't know that you've been to Colorado.
I've never been to Colorado.
Okay.
I've never been. So here's the scoop between... All right. Here's the scoop. At GRPC in 2019, you were. I think it was me and Derek Leblanc.
Derek Leblanc. Yep. My two brothers.
Right. And you're like, hey, how come you guys always call each other brother?
Right. And I have nothing.
Bro, and I have nothing.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you shall be our sister from a different mister.
Yes. And anytime we communicate on social media, you, me, and Derek,
yes,
we're always brother and sister, and I like that. Yeah.
It is good stuff. So, tell us about how you became a gun gal, because to me, you're a very unsuspecting gun gal.
Yes.
And then when you find out how, I don't want to say how radical you are about things, but you do have a book called The Government Ruins Nearly Everything.
I do have that book, that's true.
So how did all this come about?
Yeah, I don't know that I could have predicted it, honestly. I grew up in California, and not necessarily in a gun family or anything.
Right, I call them gun agnostics.
Gun agnostics. I think I knew people who shot and stuff like that, but we had law enforcement and military people in our family and extended family, so I sort of grew up in that kind of thought process of nobody was going to talk bad about firearms, I guess. But I wasn't a firearms owner until I belonged to a gym, and I was leaving a gym one night, and I had that spidey sense that something's not right with this person that was following me around in the gym and who was significantly bigger than me.
Right.
And I pipe in my truck, and
A pipe?
a pipe, you know, because
you used to play Clue when you were young?
not that kind of a pipe, like a, you know, like a, I don't know, pipe,
A
like
PVC pipe?
metal
Like
pipe,
a metal pipe?
metal pipe
That's what
that I
they
had
used in
thrown
Clue.
that I had thrown behind my my seat, like for just in case, right?
Right.
And it occurred to me in that moment that
You're not in the car?
I'm not in the car. I was going to my car. He was following me. I don't know how to. It was, I don't know, 20 or something. I don't know how to use a pipe effectively. And this dude was really, really big. And so everything was fine. Nothing ended up happening. But it was that aha moment to me that, you know, I know how to take care of myself in, you know, other realms of my life. But how do I protect myself if something happens? So sought out some friends, started going to the range, and became a gun owner at, I don't know, maybe I was 23 by the time I actually got my first gun, something like that, a revolver. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm a big revolver guy, which is okay. Still living in California?
Then?
Then yes.
Yeah.
Because probably the only thing that's legal, right?
Well, no, I mean, you could get firearms there. You just couldn't carry them legally.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you couldn't carry them legally. A lot of people carried them because there were some dangerous areas, but it was they are may issue, so you need to beg for permission from your local law enforcement and
Right.
convince them that you have
A gun might be better than a pipe.
Yeah, a gun might be better than the pipe. So yeah,
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
So that's how it started.
That's how it started. Yeah.
And then in California, the gun laws were terrible, and I started, you know, being interested in, well, why can't I? If I go to a dangerous place, why can't I carry? And so it started to plug into some local gun groups. It was in Orange County, California, which was at the time still pretty conservative and still pretty pro-gun. And so started learning about it. I really didn't know much about even the Second Amendment at that time, other than it existed.
Right.
And so just started learning and hanging out with people, including capital L libertarians, because California Republicans weren't really supporting gun rights. So picture like the 90s, the Clinton assault weapons ban and all that kind of stuff. The Republicans were voting for this stuff.
I love this, more freedom, less government.
So in my county, if you're looking to move to my county, it's Elbert County, Colorado. It's a very conservative county. The local Republican Party wants people to know, if they're out here looking for a house, this is what we're about. If you don't like this is our little 2 street.
This is it. All right, we're
You're gonna go down the little adorable
the Wildflower Saddles and Tack.
Yeah, there's a mini donut store.
A mini donut
Not
store?
that
Is it
I've
a
ever-
mini donut or a mini donut store?
It's mini donuts, like they're little
Okay.
donuts.
Like the little Hostess cakes?
Mm,
Like those little guys?
they make them right there, and then they
Oh,
frost
that's
them
cool.
right there. Yeah, it's very cool.
This is awesome.
So, and you know,
Oh, I know we're done.
You're gonna run out, yeah. But it's adorable because, like, at Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving, at Halloween, they block off these streets and they have really cool things for kids, and we bring our grandkids to stuff all the time. Yeah, you're done with it downtown now.
All right.
Now you're gonna find some cows out
We're
here,
gonna find some cows. Perfect.
which is fine. Or
Let's keep going this way.
Sure,
As
why
long as you can get us back to where we need to go.
Yeah, it's
That's
gonna
what
end,
counts.
and then you'll go back to where we came from.
All right.
And keep going
Perfect.
to the county seat, because we need to see the county seat. See, you're literally done with the street.
You are not kidding.
I like my little small town here.
Oh my gosh.
So I just started, kind of paying more attention to why I couldn't make these decisions for myself. And I had been a lifelong Republican. My family was Republican on both sides. And but again, didn't really pay much attention to any of that at that point. But I talked to some people who were, again, capital L libertarians, and they said, if you really want somebody who's going to fight for your gun rights, Republicans aren't doing it. And in California, that was largely true. So that started me kind of paying more attention to politics. I guess that kicked everything off. Go that way.
Nice. All right. That's pretty cool. So how long from when you started to pay attention to politics? I love that you say a capital L libertarian.
Yes.
I think I've gone from a small C conservative to a small L libertarian, which I think is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really define anything, but kind of gives people an idea.
No,
I
think it does, because that's how I'll describe myself today, as a small L libertarian, because I live in a place where, by and large, Republicans do protect people's rights, especially their Second Amendment freedoms, and so I can do that. I can get that support within the main party, but I would like the Republican Party to be even more liberty-minded. But
yeah,
for
sure. So how long until you became a gun gal in your early 20s and got more into it? When does that turn into?
Decades later.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I worked in the banking industry. I had a good career with pretty big job and lots of travel and all that kind of stuff. And until, this is again financial services, until 2008, when all that TARP stuff happened.
Right.
Yeah. And at that time, I was traveling full time from Denver to Des Moines, Iowa, for about 3 years, a full time travel job on a project. And they canceled the project in 2008. So all of these people from all over the country who were traveling were laid off. And at the time, I thought it was completely devastating that this terrible thing could happen. I look back at that and say that was the best thing that ever happened. Yeah. Because there was a presidential election going on that year, and I sort of tripped and fell into a Republican victory office, and I said, Barack Obama's running for president. He's not going to protect my gun rights. I want to do what I can to help. And so, kind of tripped and fell, and never went back to the banking world, which I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
And I kept saying yes to all kinds of different things that I could have never predicted for myself. And I think where things first started to, where I first started to get some recognition for what I was doing is back in 2013, Michael Bloomberg came into town and with his slate of gun control bills.
With his slate of gun control bills, his check, and the pedestal he had to stand on.
Yes, all of those things.
Right.
And I got ticked off that this New York mayor was coming out to our Colorado and spending all this money to try and take our gun rights. And so by that time I'd run some campaigns and I'd done some other political stuff. And so when Michael Bloomberg did these ads, I was like, that's not okay. Who's with me? Let's do some ads against what he's talking about. And so I made this radio ad, and the language I thought was pretty simple. One of the lines said, and this is talking to the legislators in Colorado, if guns aren't for you, don't own one, but don't you dare tell me how to defend myself.
Nice.
And I just talk like that, Charlie. I wasn't trying to come up with like a catchy line, but it really caught on. And there was all kinds of Twitter activity with it. And then I heard from NRA TV, Cameron Gray, and who's recently passed. And I was on with Cam Edwards in 2013. And so they were the first national media organization to cover what we were doing out here. And the establishment media, kind of that corporate media, wouldn't talk about it. Even the local media wasn't much talking about it. And so, but that led to like CBS Evening News, and we ended up getting really a lot of national coverage, which national coverage brought national hate. So this was my first time understanding that there are people out there who are opposed to private gun ownership. And I just assumed if you're kind of on the anti-gun side, you were a more peaceful person. And that disabused me of that idea.
Right.
I got some of the most hateful mail and email and all that kind of stuff. We even had one threat that we ended up getting a criminal conviction on that subsequent year. But that really opened my eyes to, number one, this is not for the faint of heart. You know, you got to have some pretty thick skin to be out publicly talking about these things. And it's just not for everybody, but it really showed me, I guess, what's at stake. That these are people who will threaten my safety just because I want to protect myself, and it kind of threw me.
Which is really weird, because you want to be able to protect yourself, and then these people that don't want you to be able to protect yourself are threatening you.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. So so that was all very interesting, but that I like all freedom. I got known for my Second Amendment freedoms because I ended up doing a lot of media around those recalls, and I think that's how I kind of became a gun girl in a lot of people's minds with all that media. We did end up recalling 2 state senators over their votes, and in 2013, Cam and Company actually came out and live broadcast out here on election day.
Cam came out?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
The whole team.
That's
and so,
great.
you know, Cam was the first, like when we won, when we recalled them, Cam was the first person standing right there, and we high-fived, and it was very cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
That is awesome. You've been on a bunch. You've been on a lot with Cam, like pretty regularly.
Yeah, many times over the years on just different things going on in Colorado.
Yeah.
And you know, sadly, we've had our share of mass shootings out here, and you know, I've done a lot of work in that area as well. And
so how does all of this lead to faster, safe loans?
So in 2013, when we had those recalls, I got a call from Cameron Gray at NRA TV, Cam and Company, and he said, "Hey, some people from Ohio want to meet you, and they want to come help you with your recalls." And I was like, "Well, more people is better than fewer people." So,
right.
So he put me in contact with Sean Maloney for Buckeye Firearms Association. They ended up deploying at their expense 10 people, split between the 2 cities where the recalls were happening. They walked, they called, they went to gun ranges and gun stores and handed out flyers and water at high school football games. And like, we learned a lot from the work that they did, and they really helped us. I mean, that we didn't win the big one, which was the Senate president. We only won by a few hundred votes. And so you go, okay, do 5 or 10 people who really know what they're doing coming out and helping, does that make a difference? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as a part of that, kept in contact with them over the years, and they said, you should come see what we're doing training our teachers. And I was like, I like teachers. I like keeping kids safe. I think that's a good idea. So I went out in the middle of summer in Ohio. So we don't have humidity here in Colorado.
Right, but it does get really hot.
But it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat, right.
So I thought I was going to die in Ohio. But what happened is, and I'm not a real emotional processor. I'm a pretty logical processor.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very emotional experience for me being out at Faster Safe Lives in Ohio. And I mentioned I have law enforcement and military family members, but not really very many teachers. I didn't know that many school employees other than the people who taught me when I was going to school. By the way, this is our county seat, huge as it is. And you'll be out of this town momentarily, and then you can turn around
All right.
before you end up in Nebraska. But I met these people who, to a person would die to protect the children in their schools. And they were just asking for a chance to stop the killer, save the children, and maybe have a chance to go home to their own families that night.
Right.
And it changed me. I came back, I was working on some stuff with Independence Institute out here, which is a free market think tank in Denver. I was working on some stuff. I talked to Amy Cook, who was kind of my go-to at the time, and I said, we got to do this. this year. And so for the next year, I put my nose to the grindstone. Amy called me a woman possessed. And I found instructors, I found a range, and I had to go find people to come take the class because nobody was this is 8 years ago now. Nobody was talking about being armed on campus. It was very quiet. So I ended up calling county sheriffs in rural areas and saying, if this sounds interesting to people in your jurisdiction, we want to train them. And what we needed to do was Faster Saves Lives from Ohio needed to come out and say, yes, you can train faster because your guys are good enough. And our instructors are all active duty law enforcement instructors. They're just a great group of guys. So that's how that happened. So I've been, autonomously running this out here in Colorado. We're in our 7th training year. We're in 37 school districts, and we're at about 300 people going into this year.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And if you'd caught me 10 years ago and said, fast forward, you're going to be running this organization, and then media stations are going to call you when there's school shootings so that you can talk about what's going on, I would have told you were smoking some kind of crack. But it's very interesting because it doesn't feel like a job. It feels, probably because it doesn't pay anything, but also it feels like a mission. It doesn't feel like it's very hard work, but it's that kind of hard work that at the end of the day you're like, man, I'm doing something that's very worthy.
Yeah.
And just being able to meet these 300 people over the last 7 years of training who are just heroes. They're amazing people. Has just been the honor of my life. So we're happy to bring this service to the folks in Colorado who need to get their training somewhere, and we think we're giving them world-class training. Absolutely. As opposed to just training,
Yeah, totally. So I became a gun guy through being a teacher. I've been a teacher since the 1900s. And on September, the quick version of my story is on September 11th, they were using my classroom to take pictures because it was picture day. And I sat in the teacher's room and I watched everything unfold. I had a 9-month-old son, and I went home and I'm like, we live in a dangerous world. Like, I spent my 20s playing in a band and drinking beer and watching girls dance, and I was perfectly happy and content with that. But now that I get this little boy, I got to be able to protect him, and I need to be able to protect me. So I sat in the teacher's room not long afterwards, and the principal had a meeting with us and said that if somebody gets in the school that's not supposed to be there, he's going to say the eagle has landed, and that meant that we should lock the doors and hide them under the desks.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that doesn't really work for me because I'm in a different room or a different building, and I don't have any desks. So I sat in the teacher's room with a bunch of, and I was very green about where my politics were. And I said, if the teachers on the first floor of the building all had guns, they could shoot the bad guys, and the teachers on the second floor can keep on teaching, and then we need half the grief counseling and all that sort of stuff. And they looked at me like it was ridiculous. So we had a vacation in February, and I'm like, I'm gonna get my gun license and show you guys what this is about, right? And it took. I started the process in Massachusetts in February, and I think by June I had a gun license and never fired a gun before. And
wow.
And that's how things kind of happened for me. So when
it's a turning point.
Yeah, it really was. And then everything after that was, I became an RSO, so I could run bowling pin shoots to get away from the wife and kids, and then become an instructor, whatever, all that kind of. Did the whole break-even analysis, and well, if I spend this much money to become an instructor, and then this is how much money, how many students I have to make, or how many I have to make what I spent, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, when I hear the stories about teachers, it's. In school shootings and whatnot, it really gets to me. I've had some people say to me, they're like, well, we would be okay with someone like you carrying a gun in the school. Right. And I'm like, one, I can't, and two, there's more people when I carry at Walmart. There's more people in Walmart than there is in a classroom.
Right, including children, by the way. So for people who are concerned about about their children being around an armed school employee, they're around more concealed carry people at Walmart. They just don't know it.
Right.
And nothing's going wrong. But I think in the last 7 years since I've been doing this, I feel like the acceptability, just the general public saying, yeah, that's probably a good idea, it's really, really increased from when we started in 2017 with our first class. And sadly, I think it's because of each subsequent shooting. Uvalde was kind of a game changer, because for the people who say, well, law enforcement will take care of that, now they have a very visible example of law enforcement very much not taking care of that.
Yeah.
And as much of a spike in interest and activity as we had after Uvalde, it was about 4 times bigger after Coventry Christian in Nashville. And it took me some time to kind of think through that. But number one, it was 12 minutes until Nashville Metro PD got there. Now, when they got there, they got after it, which is good.
Right.
And stopped the killer very quickly. But it was 12 minutes in a metropolitan area. That's concerning. I think because the body cam footage and the other still cameras in the school those images were released very quickly, it brought the horror of what happened in there to people, including, the killer shot through that front door. And I've had a number of people say to me, well, what if the secretary or whoever was sitting there could have just stopped her right there and nobody would be dead? And so I think that sort of sunk into people. The other thing is, it was a private school. And I think private schools up until now have felt a little bit more immune.
Sure.
So each one of these shootings kind of, brings in more people who are saying, I don't know if I'm for armed people in schools, but I want my kid alive. And they see the faces. There's all this news coverage of people going to try and find their kid. They see the faces on, the looks on the faces of these parents who are desperately hoping to find their child running out of there alive, and they don't want to do that. And it's a very visceral thing for people that you've got kids in school. These things you just feel them. You put yourself in that situation, your children in that situation. So it's the acceptability, I think that's the right word. It has really increased over the years that we've been doing this.
It really should, because I try not to bring up my outside school life into my inside school life very often, and try not to let the streams cross, and whatnot. But there's plenty of teachers that are more than willing to fight for their students.
Right.
So why not give them something that's going to be an effective tool?
Right.
Why would you want to have something? Why would you want to have something else? I know. I was just thinking, one of the colleagues, a woman I work with, she and I got into this discussion, and she said at one of the schools that she teaches at, after one of the school shooting incidences, one of the teachers decided to have the kids paint a rock at the beginning of school, and she put the kids painted rocks all around the classroom, so they were able to use those if they needed to. But you don't want to trust a pitching arm. You know what I mean?
Right. And there's a reason that members of law enforcement don't carry rocks; they carry guns.
Right.
Because there are certain attacks that happen that there is no other defense than another firearm to protect life. And it's interesting you talk about the people who are willing. So I think the last poll I saw is that 8% of school employees are in favor of this. You don't need any more than 8% to protect a school. So
Right.
if all of those people were given the opportunity to do that, the school is going to be protected. And we've never I've never talked to a school that wants to do this policy that was like, well, nobody wants to do it. That's not the case. There are, here in Colorado, there's something like 9% of Coloradans have a concealed carry permit. Do you think none of them work in a school? Of course, lots of them work in schools.
Sure.
And it's not the popular conversation in the teacher's lounge. So usually the superintendent, when they start going through their vetting process and, interest level and all that stuff, every superintendent says, I never knew I was going to hear from her. I never knew I was going to hear from him, which is great, because the people we want carrying concealed in schools are those quiet professionals.
Right.
That they're just the janitor, the music teacher, the principal. Nobody sees them as anything else because they are the quiet professional. They just happen to be armed.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. If you become a gun guy or a gun gal, you have to carry a knife. And then after you carry one knife, you have to carry two. If you carry two, you might as well carry three, right?
Why not? And be very careful when you're flying, because you forget how many you have. Yes.
Yes, I used to have the little credit card knives, and I've lost a number of those at the airports. Anyway, I carry a non-threatening knife that I use at school. I actually lost it last summer, but I had this non-threatening knife that I got at Walmart for $8. And it had 3 little blades on it, just one of those little, like an old timer sort of a knife. And when my violin students, they have fingerboard tape, where you're supposed to put their fingers on the violin fingerboard. It would get frazzled on the side, and they're like, my tape's coming undone. So I'd say they need a haircut, and then I would pull out my pocket knife and I would trim the fingerboard tape. And they're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Cook, you have a knife. And I was like, no, I have a fingerboard tape cutter. And they're like, oh, okay.
There you go.
And then just accept it for what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the school side, every class, there's always somebody. You mentioned that I maybe don't look like the stereotype or something. There's always somebody that, as a gun person, you're like, I can pick out another gun person.
Sure.
There's always somebody that you're like, nope, wouldn't have picked her out in the Walmart as being armed. And what's interesting, I had this conversation with somebody the other day as an instructor, who was asking about the balance of men and women on our that we see come through our classes, 40% women, 60% men. And this guy, he's an instructor, he said, I bet you the women are better shots. And what's interesting is, these are all averages, but we do see some women who, other people might underestimate, but they listen, they take coaching, they haven't learned a bunch of bad, like, cops and robbers.
Right. They don't watch John Wick as a training video.
Right, exactly. So it is kind of interesting, but the members of the public who don't know a lot about this policy or are uncomfortable with it, it's funny because I'll often hear, well, maybe the coach but not the teacher, and sometimes I'm hearing maybe the guy but not the lady.
Right.
And it's very interesting. I'm not thinking it's a sexist thing, but I think among people who are who don't know a lot of gun owners, they have that perception that guys can handle.
It's going to be the gym coach.
Yeah, guys can handle this big machine, but the little lady can't, or something. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is, and it makes me. I ask people this. I'm like, do you want to get shot with a 22 or a 45? And they're like, 22. I'm like, no, neither is the answer.
Yes.
Right. So, and that kind of goes to the whole, what the John Lott study that he did, where people use guns 2.5 million times to stop the commission of a crime, but you can't report it. So, we see these videos all the time that come up in all the social media stuff about when a guy goes to attack somebody pulls a gun out, and the guy decides he needs to change his career.
It's all over.
Right. And a lot of times it's just what the bad guy needs is this someone that's going to say no. Yeah.
The old adage, an armed society is a polite society. I think it is good for everybody to assume that there always might be somebody armed.
Yeah.
And the bad guys will have significantly better manners. And, when the people who are opposed to these sorts of policies, say, well, what if all of these things happen? And it's good to talk what ifs and train around them and all that kind of stuff. But man, and I use John Lott's research all the time. Nothing bad has happened in these schools where there are armed employees. But what we do know, what keeps happening, is these bad guys, sometimes in Colorado, these bad guys keep going onto schools that are gun-free zones and killing children. And that's not okay. That's the thing that needs to stop.
For sure. So do the teachers that take the FASTA program, you guys don't have like a social media presence where you're putting the pictures of the teachers out, right? Like you keep this.
Yeah, we have a social media presence where we talk about the program. We do share pictures, but we are very careful not to have anybody identifiable that isn't, part of our team, because we're not going to out schools or out any individuals.
Sure.
There are some schools that are very public about being armed. That's up to them. There are schools in Colorado that have big signs that are, bigger than those huge campaign signs you see.
Yeah.
That say we have armed staff and we will do everything in our power to protect our children. If I'm a bad guy, I'm not going there.
Right.
And
they've come out and said, "Hey, listen, we're going to shoot you if you."
Yeah, and I think
here.
there's some deterrent effect. We among the people that we know who've come through class, we've heard some stories. Nothing that's hitting the news, but where the knowledge in their community that there may be armed people there has stopped somebody. Nothing that was a big thing, but somebody's asking around and then nothing ends up happening, and so you just get little hints of these deterrent effects. And again, back to John Lott's research, the trend line for school shootings is slightly up, where the trend line for shootings at schools with armed employees is flat at 0. I realize that that's a small statistical population, but that's a great trend line.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of things do, if a school wanted to send their teachers, what kind of things are the teachers going to be doing in the course?
Yeah, and let me just clarify teachers. So most of the people we see are not actually teachers. About 40% are teachers, 60% are something other than teachers. So okay. I like to try and say armed school employees, armed faculty, okay. Just because it's, I think, more clear that way. So in level 1, which is not a beginner's class, we have a big block on mindset, big block on medical. Because if something terrible happens in your school and you can't stop the bleeding before medics get there, that's as big a deal as being able to stop the killer. Lots of firearms, obviously. A lot of tactics. I mentioned our instructors are all active duty law enforcement instructors. This is the same stuff that they're teaching. They're teaching recruits in the police academy. It's not watered down. It's not dumbed down. It is the same stuff. We teach, obviously, all of the legal ramifications of this. So they've got a course on that. We talk about methods of concealment. They have to pass a qualification that exceeds the test that police officers have to pass to get out of the academy. We do force on force scenario, a force option simulator, which is like that video game. Okay. At the end of 3 days, they are mentally and physically exhausted, and they feel like they've been there a week. Yeah. But the feedback, we do surveys after every class, the feedback we get is how life-changing this is for them, and putting them in a better position to protect their children. And then the next year they go to level 2, and then the next year they go to level 3. We're up to a level 4 now. Wow. That the skills just keep getting more and more advanced. Our guys are on SWAT teams. They are SWAT team leaders and commanders. That the stuff that these guys get to learn in those upper levels are right up there with the same kinds of skills that SWAT teams are learning, because they might have to do that same stuff, especially in a rural community when help is going to be 30, 40 or more minutes away. They are the first responders.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to say I got a 28 out of 28 when I did my qualification a couple years ago.
Okay.
I felt pretty good about that.
Good.
Because Amanda Suffolk got a 26.
So I talked to her about that. She brought that up, and she had an alibi for that. So
yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying, she had an alibi.
Right. So the week before she and I did a week or two before we did the faster class in 2021, we did a MAG 40 class in Sioux Falls, SADU, and Mass. I remember walking away from the target that Mass scored, and it was Amanda's target, and he gave her. There was one shot that was not. It wasn't on the. It should have been a higher.
Okay.
Right. It should have been a miss. And so her score was 287, and mine was 286. So for 2 weeks, she was running around. She's like, you know what? I'm not going to say I did a great job, but I outshot Charlie. And I'm like, it was one shot. It was one shot.
One shot's one shot.
Right. And we looked at each other while walking behind Masada, and we're like, we can't believe he didn't count that one. And then 2 weeks later, I got a 28 in the faster class. So I'm like,
okay,
there we go.
Good deal. Yeah. So theirs is OPATA, the Ohio Police Officers test, and ours is called Post Peace Officer Standards and Training. So very similar.
Yep.
Yeah, and we also require 100% passage, which I understand that not every law enforcement agency requires 100% passage. So it really is a rigorous class, and people got to perform.
Absolutely. What I really enjoyed was doing the scenario training.
Yes.
We did it in a school. The instructor brought in a .22 revolver with blanks, so he fired them off in the school. And I sat there. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna game this. You know what I mean? Like you got to be a student while another person was the teacher, and then there was the guy in the hallway with all the pads on, and we all had these clocks that ran on CO2 and shot these big rubber balls. And so you'd sit there, and then we'd do some after action, and you're like, all right, well, they did this and they did that, and this is how I'm going to do it differently. And then, okay. And then when it came time for us to go up and do our scenario, it was a completely different scenario. We're like, wait a second, this is not what's supposed to happen. I was going to do this. But what I thought was really good too is after each of the scenarios, like the first one was just, hey, listen, get everybody out of the building or out of the room, and engage the guy in the hall. The next time we did it, it was get everybody out of the room. Oh, there's going to be a couple people that are pretending to be injured, and you have to deal with that. And you're like,
yeah, they're not going to make it easy for you.
No, they're not.
This is about teaching.
They are not.
Yeah.
And it was really, really an amazing class.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah, and because you are a student as well as a teacher, every time you go to a different instructor, you learn something new.
For sure. For sure. How far do you see faster growing? How many states is it? Let's go with that. It's in Ohio.
So Faster started in Ohio. I call that the mothership. I think we were the first in Colorado to have our own thing. They're working on Arizona. I heard Idaho.
Okay.
So yeah, so not sure. So I'm happy to focus on Colorado.
Sure.
It's every state has such different laws and customs. Like for example, in Utah, I just refer to them as don't ask, don't tell. If you have a concealed carry permit, you can carry in school. Yeah. And it's just very different culturally to get people to want to go to training because it's not required. So culturally, it's just so different state to state. Because I've had a lot of people ask here in Colorado, well, are you going to go to neighboring states? I'm like, I got to get Colorado under control. Because there's, every year there's just so many more people. So we kind of hit a critical mass of okay, I gotta hire people because I can't be everywhere at once. So we've got a couple of retired superintendents who have joined our team as program managers that are super helpful with new schools in policies and procedures and board resolutions and vetting processes and all that kind of stuff. I'll say the one thing a lot of people don't understand about running this program, because the class is kind of the sexy part, right? It's the the thing that everybody sees. That's 5% of my work is class. The rest of it is traveling all over the state, working with schools and being on panels at town halls in these communities that are considering these policies, and the parents want to know. They want to hear it from an instructor what this looks like and all that kind of stuff. So it's really a lot of work. So we're happy to grow. It's sad that we need to, but we're happy to grow because we want all children protected. Sure. And so we do raise money, and it's never more needed than now. As after Nashville, we've had so much activity. We've had to add 2 additional level 1 classes this year just to accommodate the new schools this year. And really cool. It's good that so many people are looking at this. And it's those first year schools especially that don't have the money for it. So we raise money so that we don't want people to just go get their mandatory hours in the backyard somewhere. We want them to have excellent training by law enforcement trainers who are the exact right people to be training this stuff to them.
Absolutely. What would somebody do if they're not a gun folk? They've been a teacher, or they've worked in a school staff, and they say, hey, listen, this sounds like something that I would like to do because maybe my kids go here or something like this, and they've never had any experience.
Yes, and they want to start part of this.
Yes.
Yeah, so we can help them with where do you start. We've got instructors outside of the program that teach what we call faster essentials, that can get them ready for a level 1 class, which is not a beginner class. But really it's about what's going on in their school. Is their school district even interested in this policy? Right. What do parents do when their school board is not interested? Because these are very parent-driven policies. Parents demand. These are elected officials. Parents need to demand of their elected officials that they represent them. So there's all of those conversations too. What's going on in your school district? What's going on in your community? But if it's a school that's already authorized and it's a person who has the right mindset to be a part of the program, usually their superintendent will say, hey, could you talk to so and so? We think she'd be a good part of the program. She's gone through our vetting, but she doesn't have the actual experience. And as you know, mindset is a good chunk of what you're looking for. You can train all of the techniques over time. Right. So we can help get them plugged in there.
I think a lot of, as I think about teachers, they don't necessarily have that mindset. You know what I mean?
Enough of them do.
Yeah, that's good.
Enough of them do.
That's good.
And sometimes I hear from school employees who say, I don't want to be armed, but I'm okay being in the next door classroom with somebody next to somebody who's armed. And it's being a firearms owner is an awesome responsibility, and it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But again, it doesn't take everybody in the school, just like it doesn't take everybody being a concealed carry holder in just general public to make it a safer place.
Absolutely. I remember leading right to that, or very similar, is when in 2013, when Illinois finally passed, they decided that they were going to let their law-abiding citizens be able to carry a gun outside of their home before they even had permits, before they had any sort of a curriculum. Crime in Chicago went down.
Yeah.
Because the bad guys knew the law-abiding citizens can protect themselves. Yeah.
It's like at the towns that host the interannual meeting, crime goes down in those towns because the bad guys are like, whether the people are armed or not, the bad guys think they are.
Right.
And they go elsewhere because they, criminals don't want to die.
They don't want to die. They don't. Right. They, look, they want to make their job easy. So they're for easy victims.
Easy marks, yep.
For sure. All right. What else can we talk about? What else can we cover? What else would you like to say?
Gosh, you are going to be talking to one of my favorite people, John Castillo.
Yes.
Yes.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm going to film a show with him, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. When you hear his story, and this will just be a preview or a post view, depending on what order they listen to or watch these videos. Kendrick Castillo is the spirit of what we do here at Foster, Colorado. No student should have to make the decision to save his friends.
No kidding.
Well-trained armed adults should be there to stop killers. And he's I wear his wristband every day since I met John and Maria Castillo. He is the spirit of what we do. And when you meet people like the Castillos who, Kendrick was their only child, they understand what's at stake.
Yeah.
And they come speak to our classes. It's so important for the people who are signing up for this awesome duty to feel in their heart what can happen when the killer isn't stopped. And gosh, I'm so glad that you're going to be talking to John.
I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I'm the way I see it is this: I'm just a venue to get people's stories out.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
I'm honored to be able to do something.
Yeah. And you also get our lead instructor, Quinn.
We're gonna have a show with him as well.
It's all very faster adjacent.
I thought about doing an Ohio tour and getting Jim Irvine and Joe Eaton and having Angela Armstrong on the show and getting Candy Butt Court and stuff.
You have to talk to Sean Maloney.
Sean Maloney,
Sean
okay.
is an attorney that fights for people's rights in federal court, their gun rights. He's very interesting.
All right.
Yeah. So if you're in Ohio, don't miss Sean.
I will. All right, listen, we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
How can people find you? How can they find your book, which is great? I remember when I read it, I got pissed off about a lot of stuff.
That's what the book does. So this is the book. Government Ruins Nearly Everything. You can find it at on Amazon or wherever you buy your books. And it helps people understand why government pisses them off.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad it worked for you.
It absolutely worked.
You can find us at fastercolorado.com. You can contact me there. If you know schools in Colorado that are interested in this, please send them to us. We are absolutely the best training focused on school employees in a school environment. If you know people in Colorado or wherever who are like, that's a great idea. I should like to support that.
High school. Yeah.
Or support that.
Or support it.
So other schools, especially those little rural schools, can get in that year that they're talking about it before they have the budget for it. We can do that. We can take their help. So
you guys don't know some more.
Yeah. Yes, I can't imagine not doing it. It's such a wonderful
great.
thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
The pleasure was mine. It's always cool hanging out with you.
Yeah, you too, my brother.
I know, my sister from I Never Missed Her.
Yes.
All right, listen, if you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can join them at saf.org. There is a link in the show notes that will give Riding Shotgun with Charlie SAF credit, which I don't think gets me anything other than
wow.
Charlie sent somebody there, which is
nice.
Cool. Which is always good.
They're good people.
They are. They're the best people.
Yeah.
They're good stuff. You can find all of your favorite pro freedom podcasts at sdrn.us. That's the Self Defense Radio Network. All your favorite pro freedom podcasts in one place. And if you've certainly made it this far, you need to be sharing the show with your friends, because this is how we get the stagecoach across America. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Easy.
Easy peasy.